G'day, George. How you doing?
Very well, thanks, mate. You?
Hi. Yeah, going well, thank you.
I think we're going to have to drug test you.
Yeah.
Hell, that was an awesome weekend.
Four in a row, four races in a row.
That's awesome, eh? I mean, you must be absolutely stoked with yourself and the team.
Oh yeah, it's bloody great. I mean, yeah, bloody awesome to be able to get four in a row for sure. But
Yeah.
it's always handy when we got them back to back home rounds. Always
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Well, you had a pretty good feeling about that whole thing anyway, going into Queensland Raceway and then Morgan Park. The real test begins next round, eh?
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's what we spoke about. Like part of the way through one of the other podcasts was that I sort of
Mm.
said, all right, we'll reevaluate at the end of this round to sort of see where we're at. So yeah, we're back in the hunt, but I think we're about 17 points down. So Josh has still got a buffer on us, but yeah, we're second in the championship. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's what at least I know where I sit.
that's very cool. Before I get into I made some notes about the races and I thought I'll run through it in a little bit of detail, more so than we've done in the past.
Yeah, sure.
But how are you keeping? It's this. It feels like that gap between races is so long.
It is. Yeah, it really is. But it's bloody takes forever. I think I can't remember how many weeks it was between the last two rounds. It was about 8 weeks, nearly 7 or 8 weeks. So, yeah, I was very fortunate that during that break after Queensland Raceway, was able to go and have a bit of a holiday.
Yeah.
So had a nice little bit of a break and for a couple of weeks and yeah, just chill out and relax and get away from it all and switch off a little bit. So there was 2 weeks there where I just turned off and yeah had a good little bit of a break. Which is honestly it's unusual. Like I'm always so focused and full on and right into it all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you?
But it was like
I mean, you would have
actually
kept training during that period, wouldn't
honestly, I didn't. I did nothing. I just
you? Yeah.
said I'm just gonna have a. I just gonna have 2 weeks off. I'm gonna reset, refocus, just take it easy. And yeah, so I had a good couple of weeks, and then came back, and yeah, we had 6 weeks till the race, so that was plenty of time from a fitness point of view to get back into training, and I did lots of riding. Did a lot of riding at Morgan Park. We did a 2 day test with the team.
Yeah.
And I did. There's a lot of ride days available out up there at Morgan Park, so I went and did those. And yeah, because I knew how important those two races, like how important it was to win those two races at Morgan Park. So
Yeah.
made sure that I spent as much time as I possibly could there, and yeah, it all paid off in the end.
Yeah. Like it didn't do any harm. The breaks. You might have to take more breaks.
That's it.
Yeah, it was very cool. It obviously paid off that whole thing. So that's a good plan.
Yeah,
To the races, I made some notes here and I thought I'll just run through them and this will kind of give, those, particularly those who haven't watched the race, and I'm sure most people who listen to this would have watched it. But for the sake of those who mightn't have, this was the way the race went. So this is race one. It's a 14 lap race. We had Pearson was on pole, Stouffer was on second, and you qualified third. So you guys occupied the front row. That same order went into turn one, and I noticed, yeah, poor old Arthur Cece's, he crashed and oh no, didn't crash. He ran off track in turn one, and by the time he got back on, he was last. He got up to ninth in that race from last, so pretty good effort on his part. You were into second by turn four on lap one. So you'd passed, who'd you pass? You passed Stouffer. No, you passed Pearson. By lap two, Pearson had started to gap Stouffer, right? Stouffer had the fastest lap, 1 minute and 30 seconds, 1 minute and 13 seconds, and he was in the lead. You got on the back of Stouffer, and then both of you started to gap everyone else. It was you two kind of drifting out in the front. What it seemed to me, it was interesting as I was watching it. It looked like you were faster in the first half, and then Stouffer was faster in the second half of the corner, of the track, the faster backside of it. But by lap three, um, that's right, lap three, Brian Starring had a massive crash. Did you see that? That
I,
was
I've watched the replay of the race. It was huge.
well, he didn't get to start in race two because the bike was obviously, in pieces. But anyway, you picked up some lap three onwards. You started to pick up speed in the backside of the track, and it was interesting because you looked a lot smoother than Stouffer. By lap seven, the gap had closed down to zero point 0.2 of a second, and then on lap 10, turn 8, you passed him through that fastest corner on the track, and by lap 11, you had a zero point 0.7 gap. That was an amazing pass through that corner. Like, I know how fast that particular one is, and I know they've resurfaced it, but it was brilliant. But like I said, it looked a lot smoother through there. By lap 12, Pearson, he got into second. He'd passed Stouffer, and then Stouffer and Pearson had a great battle to the end. They actually battled a fair bit right to the end. End result, you won by 2.37 seconds. You actually just cleaned them all up at the back end, right at the end of the race. Pearson in second, Stouffer in third, Waters in fourth, and Crew Halliday in fifth. But as I said, Cece's went from last to ninth, and I thought that was just amazing effort. So that's basically the race. Yeah, what was your take on the race?
Yeah, look, honestly, my take on the race, it was actually quite an enjoyable race, and fortunately, it panned out perfectly. As in, starting from third place on the grid, there was a little bit of just take a step back. I'll go back to the qualifying for a quick second. There was a little bit of a strange qualifying session in that we only sort of really got the first 5 minutes or so of the session. As the session went on, there was a few crashes and a couple of red flags. So not everybody got a chance to run with the new tyre and put their lap time down. I don't think many did at all. I know Brock did early on, and he went with the new tyre straight away. But for the rest of us, I don't think we really got out there and got to have a proper crack with the new tyre. So yeah, look, starting from third on the grid for those two races, then it was super important to be on the front row. As we saw in that start of that race, with the likes of Sissy, just manage of, like, when you're in a bunch like that going into those first two turns at Morgan Park, it's very tight. And it's very easy to, rub bars with somebody else, and next minute you run off the track, and then that just ruins your race. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I made a great start. I felt like I got off the line really well, and got cleanly through 1 and 2. But I knew that both Brock and Stouffer would start well at 2. So I sort of figured that it'd just be a matter of settling behind them and just wait for the opportunities to present themselves, really, and make the passes when the opportunities arose, rather than trying to force the passes as such.
Right.
Fortunately, from my point, it was only at turn 3. Brock was in the lead, and he had a small little moment exiting turn 3, and that was just enough for Max to have a go up the inside of him into turn 4, and that left Pearson sort of out on the outside, sort of wide, and I was able to go up the inside as well. So I just latched right on the back of Max, and yeah, like you said, he was setting a cracking pace. Like, he did 13.0, fastest lap of the race, I'm pretty sure, and like, he was into it. Yeah, for that first, I'd say probably about half race distance. Yeah, about around seven or 8 laps. Like, he was really smooth, consistent. I had no reason to want to go ahead of him. Like you said, we were getting a gap over. I think Pearson was behind us. We were opening up a gap on him, so everything was all good. Once we got to about that 7-8 lap kind of mark, Max just had a few little moments, I suppose you'd say. Just missed his mark a few times in a couple of the turns, and that just sort of slowed his lap pace up a little bit, and sort of knew that it was okay. I got to get going, to get past Max and just try and get going, because my pace behind him was comfortable, and I knew that I could still maintain a similar sort of pace on my own. So I knew that if I got past him, I'd be okay to probably get away from him, and then that would mean that it'd likely be favourable that if Pearson was to be coming back towards me, then he'd have to go past Max, and that'd be too hard for him to sort of get past Max and then catch up to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, around that lap 10 mark, I'd like I said, that back sort of section of the track was like it's a fast section through there, really really quick. It's fifth gear, pretty much wide open through the fast left, and then you roll off the throttle and tip it into the right hander. But yeah, the setup for that section, you come out of basically a 90-degree left hand turn 7, super rough and bumpy, and hard to. It's a hard turn to get right regularly and consistently, but it was a section where I was getting a bit better drive than Max, and running sort of starts to go on downhill, so I get a bit better run out of there and head down the hill. And yeah, I try to sort of set it up on the entry into this 90-degree left turn. I just try to go a little bit wider on the entry, square it up a little bit more, really focus on picking the bike up and driving it hard on the exit. Yeah, just got that little bit better run than him down the hill. I think it was probably a combination of I got a good run and he might have not got as good a run as what he had been getting. So it sort of just gave me that extra momentum over him to sort of slip up the inside. And yeah, went past him on the inside into that turn 8. But yeah, it's a pretty full on turn. It's bad enough when you're going through there on your own, let alone having to go. We nearly went through there side by side. So yeah, it was
Well,
pretty cool place.
he was getting less drive out of 7. You could see like he's starting to get a bit untidy there, and and even the commentators, made the point. You were looking a lot smoother there. It's like you had, yeah, I was thinking about it before. It's almost Pecco Bagnaia-ish, almost showing a lot of patience leading up to the later stages of the race. As opposed to the way that you raced at Phillip Island this year. This was a different thing completely, and then
Yeah.
it paid off, and you had edge grip and drive that obviously Max didn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I felt like I was confident heading into the race that I had a great motorbike for the full race distance.
Yeah, right.
And so when Max was ahead of me, like I said, I didn't feel I felt like maybe I could have done a little bit more than him. But it would be you'd be punishing your tire and everything that little bit more, and it would have made it really hard to sustain that through to the end of the race. Whereas I felt like I had that when I was behind Max, I had that ability to just sort of conserve and look after the tire a little bit, knowing that I would need that right at the end there. And
Yeah.
so that's what I think. Yeah, for Max, he was probably, even though the pace was unreal, he was probably asking a lot from the tire and using a lot of the tire. And that's probably why I sort of struggled a little bit towards the end. Of course, I do have to mention he had a big crash during qualifying, and he was very sore. I seen him after the crash; he was really stiff and sore neck. I'm sure there was a lot of other pain as well. So
Yeah.
I believe that played a lot into it as well. Those Morgan Park's such a physical track.
Mm.
Probably the most physical circuit we go to all year, and it's bad enough when you're 100% fit and got no injuries or anything, let alone being a bit busted up the day before. So yeah, I'd say a combination of the bike would have been getting harder to ride as the race was going on,
Yeah.
and Max would have been getting more sore as the race went on as well. So yeah, those two things to me but I had those things in my mind. I knew Max would have been hurting, and
Yeah.
I could see when I was behind him that he was using a lot of tire. For me, it was just a patient sort of just waiting game, wait for the right moment. Like I said, I could see by my pit board that Brock was just starting to maybe come back towards us a little bit. And I don't know that was so much that Brock was going faster. It was just that we started to slow up a little bit. So I just sort of had to make sure I got past Max and didn't go too far back towards Brock.
Yeah. Well, Max is like you say, he did a 1:13.047 on lap 2. His fast laps there at the beginning, so there was a slowing towards the end. How is it that you can be doing very similar pace, because you were very close to Max, and yet he's wearing out the edge, and starting to lose drive, but you're not. What is it that creates that scenario?
Yeah, look, I think part of it is a bike setup thing, like because I've raced there now, 22. and 23.
Yeah.
We've had those 2 years to really sort of refine the setup with the bike. And at such a fast pace, because in the previous years I was racing against
Yeah.
Wayne Maxwell, and also Troy Herfoss. So, like the pace with those guys was really fast. So I think that from a bike setup point of view, maybe the bike had a little bit more in it, could do a little bit more if you needed to.
Right.
So it's probably just more on more comfortable within my sort of limit. And another thing too is probably just from a riding point of view, was trying to be a little bit more gentle with the throttle, use a little bit more rolling speed rather than
Mm.
trying to use outright acceleration, because that punishes the tire a lot. So just trying to keep that momentum up. And probably also a little bit with pickup as well. You try to pick the bike up off the edge of the tire and don't start accelerating until you've got the bike coming up off the edge of the tire.
Yeah.
Obviously when the bike's right on the edge of the tire and you start trying to create speed with acceleration, that's where the punishment to the tire comes from. You know what I mean? Like right on the edge of the tire, that sort of grip, that it's good when the tire's new. You know what I mean? And probably with the particular tire we're running, it was probably good for about 7 or 8 laps, I reckon.
Yeah.
And then it does start to go away. So yeah, I did try to manage that as well during the race. But yeah, I think it was just that maybe a little bit different style. Like Max might have been getting on the throttle whilst he was still on the edge, whereas
Yeah.
I felt like I was sort of like rolling it through the turn a little bit more than picking it up and picking the bike up to the top part of the tire and start to accelerate like that. So
Yeah. Right.
yeah, I think, but a combination for sure with the bike setup. I do feel like I was just doing it a bit easier as well. So I, it's hard to say. You never really know until somebody's faster ahead of you. Maybe I could have gone quicker on it. I don't know. but yeah, look, for me, it was a matter of just sit and wait till towards the end, and then try and do what I needed to get across the line.
Yeah. Well, it showed, it's like I said, it just looked smoother. You could see it. And his back end starting to lose it, and then it comes across like he's more aggressive with the throttle, but may not necessarily be the case, but it's definitely losing drive.
Well, the thing is too, when you start losing grip on the bike, it affects your entry a lot going into the turn. The back, when you're on the brake, like the back wants to step out and slide into the turn, and when that happens, it's difficult for you to get the line that you want to keep going on at the speed you want to go on. You almost sort of need to bring the speed down slower so that you can still maintain the line that you want to get on
Right.
coming into the turn. And I feel like it's a snowball effect. Once you start to lose that first bit of grip, then you naturally got to slow down that little bit more. But then when you get in the middle, so then when you do get in the middle of the turn, then you've got to ask for more throttle to get you out of there. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you've got that grip initially and you can sort of flow into the turn, where you can sort of get away without having to ask for acceleration of the tire. You know what I mean? To get
Yeah.
out of the turn. So yeah, but once it starts going like that, it just keeps snowballing. It just keeps progressing on, and it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
So
It
and
seems
then you
like,
just have to manage.
you see this in, World Superbike and MotoGP as well. It seems like that I don't know, the smarts around managing grip and being patient in the first parts of the track seem to, the first part of the race seems to be paying off across all the classes. And I go back and I can compare that to how you rode that Phillip Island round, and we talked about it. You were trying to put pressure on them, but he paid a huge price in terms of grip. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, it's like I just put it down to it's like it's a piece of rubber, you know what I mean, and it wears out. So
yeah,
the harder you want to rub that on the ground during in the beginning part of the race, the quicker it's going to wear out, and then the less grip you've got as the race goes on. You know what I mean? So you're just trying
yeah,
to find that balance where you get the most out of it for as long as possible. You know what I mean? If you got to try and calculate however long your race is and try and manage that all the way to the end. So
yeah,
yeah, and for sure you might be able to, depends on how you want to do that. You might just want to hold this nice steady pace for the whole race, and it progressively wears out to the right point at the end of the race, or you can go hard for the first half of the race, and you might get a bit of a gap, or you might be faster, but then it's going to drop away and you're going to be slower, and you've got to try to manage it, and it's harder to ride and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, there's just or you take it a bit little bit easier in the beginning, and then you've got a bit more at the end that you can get into it and use that bit that you've conserved. So that's how I just try to keep it simple, eh? try not
Sounds
to make try not to make it too complicated.
sounds simple. That temptation, personally, I know from experience, you go out and the temptation to really smash it is just
Oh yeah,
people in front of you.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That was awesome. Well, let's go to race two. Race two was 16 laps. I do have a question for you before we do that. In race two, the starting positions were the same. Is that something that they do in ASBK? Why don't they go to results from race one, similar to how they do it in World Superbike?
Yeah, look, the starting position is it's not progressive. It's honestly always been that way. In all the races I've done in ASBK, I've always been where whatever qualifying position you have, that's the starting position for the races. Um, and I don't know. It's always been like that. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I'm used to. I don't know any different. I yeah, haven't thought too much about it, to be honest. But
Yeah, I looked at it and I went, it makes sense to me that the winner from the last race should be on pole. But
yeah. I
you
suppose it's good for you if you have a bad qualifier and then you win the race, or you're strong in the races. Well, then yeah, fantastic. You get to move up the grid. But
should be
I
the
think it's
reward.
I think it's because motorcycle riders aren't very bright. So if we start having to try to readjust grid positions between races, then it gets too complicated.
You got to do maths.
It's no good.
Hilarious. Okay, so we had so the starting positions are all the same. You're on the front row in third, and again Pearson in pole and Stouffer in second. And same as race one, into turn one, you maintain the same order, but Stouffer passed Pearson, and then Allison passed Waters quite early, so it was in lap one, lap two, and you were like this little sandwich in amongst that five. On lap three, you passed Pearson in turn four. And then there was, at that point, around about that point, there was about a 0.7 gap between Max and yourself. You did the fastest lap on lap five. Then Allerton crashed on lap five as well, going into turn four, just a bit of a low side on the front end. By lap seven, Jones had caught Stouffer and passed him. Lap eight, what did I have? Oh, that's right. There was a real close grouping at the front, the three of you. Like really close. We're talking, tenths of a second between you. By lap nine or on lap nine, you passed Stouffer in turn five, and Pearson passed Stouffer in turn eight. So suddenly, it looked like Max is starting to struggle with drive, like more so than race one, and he was starting to drift back. Waters got into third on lap 10, lap 12. The gap between yourself and Pearson was actually 0.6. On lap 15, that had closed to 0.3. On lap 15, he'd actually passed you and taken the lead. And then he led into the final lap. And man, I was like, I knew the result before I watched it. And I'm going, well, where's this pass going to take place? And then blow me down if he didn't pass him as well at turn five, and ended up winning. So you won by 0.044 of a second. Man, that was close. Pearson in second, Josh Waters in third. CC's was in fourth. This time he didn't run off track, obviously. Dunker on fifth. Crew Halliday came in sixth, and Stouffer had gone back to seven. He lost a lot more drive over the course of race two, the 16-lap race, than he did in the first one. So what was your take on race two?
Yeah, look, it was the same sort of mentality heading into that race as what I had in the previous one. It was just again, those guys, both Max and Brock, started really well, so sort of slotted in behind them. I had a great start as well, but it wasn't good enough to go past them. It was only good enough to maintain position.
Yeah.
But yeah, it matter of just sitting in behind them and again waiting for the opportunities. This one was a little bit different in that, yeah, like I said, like Max got past Brock and really he got into it. He started pulling a bit of a gap pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and it took me a couple more laps to get past Brock on the brakes into turn four, and I was once I passed Brock and I had that, like I said, it was about a point 0.7 gap up to Max because he'd already, strung a few quick laps together. Um, in my mind, I had the killer instinct. Like I just wanted to go hard and catch up to him and get right on the back of him and then just sort of put that pressure on him
Yeah.
because you don't want to give someone a gap. You know what I mean? Like too much of a gap in an easy breathing space. So I that's sort of the natural sort of instinct and the natural thing to do. But there was a small part of me that was like, I was pretty sure that Max wasn't gonna, stay away
Yeah.
based on what happened in the previous race, and also knowing that, you know, um, this is now the second race of the day. I'm sure he's going to be hurting even more from his, injuries and stuff. I just didn't think that he would be able to sustain it for the length of this race. The other thing too is that this race, compared to the first race, was an extra 2 laps longer. The first race had actually been reduced a couple of laps due to some delays earlier in the day. So this one was the full 16 laps. So an extra 2 laps again. And I put my head down. I tried to set a pace to make sure that Max wasn't going to get a bigger gap. I just wanted to really try to control that gap and stop him from getting away.
Yep.
And I did sort of close the gap up a little bit, but it was more so that I think once he started to run in a few little troubles and started having some, like I said, just little errors, just run wide here and there or miss the line a little bit or those kinds of things, then he started to come back towards us.
Yeah.
And I think then it took me a few laps to get past him. I mismanaged. I honestly mismanaged this part. I didn't realize that. I thought we were further away from Brock than what we actually were. So I thought I had a bit more time to, sit behind Max or, give me a bit more time to get past him. And but what I didn't actually realize was that Brock was actually right on us. He was, like I said, we were in the middle there, and it was all three of us were really close together. And I was like, it sort of made me. I was like, I've got to get going. I've got to get past Max and try and get going because it's a bit dangerous when you've got somebody that close to you, and especially if you're not in the lead and you're not away on your own. When you're in a group like that, once you start losing a bit of momentum, if somebody was to go past me, let's say I was behind Max and then Brock put a move on me, that becomes dangerous because then there's somebody behind them that could go past you. Like you just start losing momentum pretty quickly.
And he had plenty of drive too. Like
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I didn't watch the first race. I never seen the video of it. Didn't watch the first race, but I've watched the races back now, and 100%. Like he had fantastic drive off the turns and was getting the right line to. That was a strength of that bike and that riding style, and so sort of playing into it as well. So, yeah, for sure, it was a bit of a dangerous position to be in. So I knew that I needed to get some momentum going forward. So I did manage to pass Max. Was a nice. I enjoyed that pass. Honestly, it was just a different change of lines and had a nice exit. Turn 4 and the run on into turn 5. I feel like I'm trying to create new places to pass. I don't know what's going on. It's an unusual spot to make a move, but I found a bit of extra momentum there and went up the inside. And I thought that maybe it would have been harder for Brock to maybe get past Max, and I would have given me a bit more time to sort of string a few laps together and get away. But it wasn't. Brock got past Max pretty quickly.
3 turns later.
Yeah, really, really quickly. So I tried to sort of extend my gap. Like it went out to I think 0.6. I tried to sort of get away, but it wasn't enough. Like Brock was close enough to, not say like follow as such, but when you've got a reference in front of you, it can sort of drag you along a little bit. And I feel like it was close enough that he could see everything that I was doing. He could keep me in his sights. So although that gap went out a little bit, it wasn't enough. And yeah, look, he had a good bike right to the end, so he was able to come past on the straight and with 2 laps to go. I
Yeah.
think that he thought he might have had a little bit extra and could do something with it. But I honestly, I didn't. When I was in the position where I'd gone past Max, I should have, in hindsight, I should have just put my head down and went like at 100%. But I didn't. Because I knew that there was still a long way to go in the race, and I didn't think that his setup and his bike would be able to go all the way to the end. And I thought that I would be okay riding it sort of like, 90, 95% and sort of just maintain a bit of a gap. But instead I really should have just tried to get out of there and put a big enough gap into him so he didn't have a chance of sort of like hanging on. But yeah, I gave him the opportunity and he used it and he came past, and then it meant that, we had 2 laps to go. Fortunately, he had put in a big effort to stay there. So he'd used a lot of tyre. And when he went past, down through the back section, the fast left that we mentioned about from the previous race, had a big moment he had a big moment over the bumps there, and it stepped him sideways. And that to me was an indicator that, okay, I could see that he was like really struggling. Like he was fully maxed out, like on the limit. And I did feel like I had that little bit extra, just buffer up my sleeve, I suppose. So once it come down to that last lap, then he had another little bit of a moment exiting turn 4, and it was a combination of things. Like I said, I'd put him up pass on Max there. I knew that I was strong there, so I was sort of trying to line up a good momentum out of there. He had a bit of a slide, a bit of a lose there. And, the combination of those two things meant that I could get a really good, nice entry into turn 5 and go past. And then for the rest of that lap, it was just a matter of closing the doors, because I knew I seen from when I was behind him, like, how far on the limit he was. So I knew that I just need to shut the doors, and then he wouldn't be able to, make another move. But for sure, coming out of the last turn up and over the crest, from a power point of view, there was I was very lucky that I was able to just hang on to it to the line. Lucky the finish line was another 10 meters down the track.
He was trying, and you could see, particularly through that little, 11, 12 chicane, he really put an effort through there to get the momentum too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a place where he was actually quite strong. Like I said, talking about the exits, and getting the run up and over that hill. So I did try to make it change a little bit what I did in the middle of that turn, to maybe check him up a little bit on the gas in the middle there, and hopefully, maybe adjust his run so he couldn't get as good a run up through the middle of those 2 turns. But I don't know if it made much of a difference, but it was enough for me to get the win.
Yeah, that's all that mattered. He was interesting because, because you passed both Stouffer and Pearson through turn 5, into turn 5. It was interesting because they had to hold a bit of a tighter line for their run into, turn 6, whereas you were able to hold a different line than them. That was one of the things that stood out to me. It's like the setup of your bike seemed to match those tighter turns a little bit more. Did you have that same feeling as well? Because they definitely couldn't hold that line into turn 5 the same way you did.
Yeah, look, I think that sort of complex of turns, turn 4, 5, and 6, they all link together really, really well.
Yeah.
And the typical sort of line that you normally run, like they were both sort of running that line, is that when you exit turn 4, you keep the bike sort of hard to the right. You open up the entry into turn 5. You can sort of sweep through there with a lot of turn speed, and then sort of run into turn 6 which opens up it opens up turn 6 as well, because you end up finishing turn 5 kind of tight, which opens up turn 6.
Yeah.
I was sort of just changing it up only because I would normally do what they were doing when I'm on my own typically, but when I was around them and near them, I sort of needed to change it up to just try and find clear track basically, and try and keep the momentum up. So I'd sort of exit turn 4 rather than try and keep the bike to the right, try to sort of let it run out a little bit, sort of more direct line, just covering less distance on the entry into 5. And what it meant then is that when I went through five, I was wider on the exit of five, which meant I was really tight on the entry to six.
Yeah.
But it didn't really matter then because turn six is such a slow turn, and it's like almost once you get to the middle of it, you can reset your line anyway, right in the middle there, because we both lines in the previous couple of turns, they lead to the same point anyway. So then you can get back onto the correct line exiting turn six. So, yeah, just trying to be a bit different there, trying to find the space. And because if you just run the same line as the guy in front of you, well, you'll be stuck behind them forever. You know what I mean? So yeah, just trying to find a different way and through there to try and carry momentum. And look, the bike did. You're right, it did. It worked really well in those sort of tighter turns. I think whilst I was still quick and able to make passes through the fast stuff as well, maybe it was better set up for the tighter stuff, and was able to do that stuff a little bit easier. And I could sort of change lines and do different things through those corners as well. Whereas maybe they were kind of just set on, they had to run that line and that was all they could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was a point there when the three of you were close. You were sandwiched in the middle, going out of two into three. I looked at it and I thought it looked like you were going to try and pass in turn three. Was that something that you pondered at some point there towards the end?
A little bit. I mean, it's especially with Brock, not so much with Max. He would cover the line on the entry into three, maybe a little bit more compared to Brock. But Brock's style and the way that bike's set up going in there, like he'd sort of exit turn two and then really sweep back across to the right hand side of the track, which would really open up the entry into turn three. But it opened the door up a lot, and I did sort of have a bit of a look a couple of times and thought about it, just to see if there was an option there. And probably if you wanted to really force it, you could go in there for sure. But I find that when I pass, it might take me a couple of laps to sort of work out where's the best place to do it. But typically when I make a pass, I very rarely put someone else out, you know what I mean? Like as in like they can nearly almost keep their same momentum and keep the line and everything fine. And so when I sort of have this, when I'm sizing them up basically and like trying to work out where the pass is, I'll sort of get a bit of a gauge as to, how forceful you're going to have to be to make that move. And look, yeah, for sure, when it's a last lap situation, then you can be a little bit more aggressive. But during the race, you just try and find a place where it's the most convenient, really. Try not to upset anyone too much.
It'd be a tricky one because for you to take, past there, you'd almost take a mid-sized bike line in tight to the left, and then they could pass you on the exit. It's one half a dozen of the other.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a crossover. Yeah, you go the wide line on the entry, tighter line on the exit, or you go the tight line on the entry and then you're wider on the exit. And that's the thing about looking for passes too. It's you've got to think about, okay, well, can I keep the momentum on the exit enough that they can't get back past as well? So.
Yeah. Well, you're able to do that in the places you passed. We got, if I go through the summary documents, what do we got? Morgan Park Raceway summary. We had big win for Mike Jones, 50 points, clean sweep. Brock Pearson, 41. Josh Waters, third. Cameron Dunker, fourth. Maxi ended up with kind of tied for fourth, actually, with 32 points. So the same points as Dunker. Then Crew came in sixth with 30 points. So the overall championship, as you said, Josh Waters is just ahead. He's got a what's that? 17 point lead on you. You're in second, 162.5 points. Crew Halliday, 145 in third. Brock, 139.5 in fourth, and Max Stouffer, 130 points in fifth. Couple of standouts. Ant West is now up to seventh. What's he got? 97.5 points. Who for you? So that's the championship standings. Who for you would be the standout rider other than yourself at Morgan Park?
Look, Max would have been I reckon, providing that he didn't have his injury from the Saturday qualifying, I reckon that hampered him significantly. Like I said, the first race, it obviously it did hamper him, and I reckon for that second race, even more so, just because it's so physical around there, and when you're doing, two races on the same day, it's pretty brutal. So yeah, for sure, Max is, and he was quick at Queensland Raceway as well, so he seems to have really found something. Really found something come on strong with the R1. So he's gone really well. And I'd say the other one would be Cam Dunker, from the same. Cam and Max are in the same team. It's just Cam's a rookie, and he's only young. I actually don't know how old he is. He's 16 or 17 or something like that, 18 maybe. He's only real young, and this is his first year in the superbike category. And look, he had a strong couple of races, really. Yeah, he starting back, I think he had maybe starting from 9th or 10th or something on the grid, and then came forward in both races. So both those guys showed potential. Max showed potential with racing at the front. Yeah, sure, he didn't overall result, wasn't there, but I feel like he was, that was from an injury, but he showed really good pace at the front. And then from Cam's point of view, progressing forwards, and it's pretty hard to pass around Morgan Park, honestly, and for him to have the confidence to be able to move forward and have good pace to be able to do that, it shows a lot. So and also to do it without, and he wasn't just he's obviously riding within he can feel the limit he was riding within himself too, not to overstep the mark and crash out of the races as well. So definitely both those guys were unreal.
Well, Cam Dunker, he qualified 10th, as you said, and then came in overall 4th for the win.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a big step up from 10th from qualifying.
Yeah. Well, if I look at his times, 1:13.297, he's no slouch out there.
No, that's pretty cool. Considering I think the fastest laps of that first race was a 13.0, and maybe a 12.9, or 13.0 again in that second race, maybe 12.9. I think might have been the quickest. To be only a couple tenths or a few tenths off, that's pretty solid.
We have Pearson, I think, 1:13.119.
Okay, yeah. So there you go, even closer. Yeah, only a tenth off the fastest time of the race. So
pretty cool.
Who knows? Had he then started further up the front and been able to ride with the guys at the front of the race, then maybe he would have been able to do even better. You know what I mean? He might have had the speed to be able to go with us or with them at the front. So
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of potential. They're gonna give you guys some curry, these young blokes.
Gonna have to find some youth. We're getting older. I need to get younger.
So I said straight to the performance enhancement drugs.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you seen they got the enhancement games now?
I have seen that. Yeah. I have seen something about that. Yeah.
I cannot wait, right, to see that, because I think everyone wants to see, the human who jumps 20 feet, not 10 feet, runs, 8 seconds, not 9 seconds. I think absolute winner. But it's very cool. Can I ask you a technical question?
Mm-hmm.
With suspension settings, so the assumption here is that when you go to a track, you do some work on the suspension. You don't just leave it the same for every track. When you go to a track like Morgan Park or something, what's your tendency or the way you approach it? Do you go into the crew and say, this is what I'm feeling, and then you leave it to them to make the adjustments? Or do you go in and say, this is what I'm feeling, and then you suggest what to adjust? Or is there a combination of that? How does it work for you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a combination. Primarily, it's just on what I'm feeling. The bike's running wide in the exit, and whatever that is, or I can't stop the bike as well, or whatever the feedback is, whatever it is that I'm struggling with on the bike. Ultimately, it's whatever it is that I feel is stopping me from going faster. Yeah. Whatever the main thing is that's stopping me from going faster, that will be what I'll communicate to the team. And because I've had I suppose a lot of experience over the years with trying different setups and knowing a little bit about suspension stuff and what we've tried and what result you got out of it. I'll just say, look, it feels a little bit like that time when we tried the heavier fork spring or the lighter fork spring or whatever that change was that we made. It feels like it's doing that, or it needs that sort of to go in that direction. Just to give them an idea as well as to what we've had it. We've done it before, and what sort of result we had. Well, maybe now we're feeling the same thing, and it needs to head down that direction as well. So yeah, it's a combination of the two. And I try to give that feedback as accurately as possible, and they will take that info and then look to the data. Like all teams now look at data, and will try to correlate with what I'm saying and looking at the data and seeing what they can see there, and trying to work out what change that needs to be made. But yeah, that's pretty much how the feedback goes from me. Yeah. And I never say, oh, hey, I want to put this fork spring in, or I want this compression setting in, or I want this gearing or anything. I never say a specific adjustment to be made. I always just give my general feeling, and and then basically it just becomes an experiment. It's a trial and error experiment. And it really, whilst it comes down to feeling, you also have to base it a lot off lap time. Ultimately, if you make a change and it can feel better, but if your lap time's slower, well then it's too bad. You have to go back. But typically speaking, in most circumstances, it will feel better and you do go faster. You know what I mean? So yeah, once you make the change, it can be pretty clear that, okay, we've made the change. It feels better. We're going quicker. Yeah. Maybe we can keep heading down that direction. Maybe we can try it a little bit more. You know what I mean? Yeah. And for sure, if it's worse, well then, yeah, you head in the other direction, or try and find something else that might be causing it instead. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do at test days.
Yeah. What would be a typical or the most common type of change that you make to the settings of the motorcycle going from track to track?
Big things, geometry, to be honest. Yeah, like geometry is a big one in terms of getting the balance of the bike right. Because different, you go for somewhere like Queensland Raceway, for example, you know what I mean? Like that's a completely different track to Morgan Park, with QR, the long straights, heavy brakings, whereas Morgan Park, the bike's got to be probably a little bit more nimble because you have a lot of change of direction, a lot of tight turns, the speed's not as high. So, geometry change there. To be honest, I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly which direction it goes or what the numbers are or any of that. I don't know any of that stuff, but I know that we do fiddle around with the geometry between tracks. And then otherwise, not a lot changes with the fork, to be honest. You'd think that it doesn't matter. It sort of doesn't, I don't know, it seems strange. You'd think that, you'd probably want to change fork setting between tracks, but it doesn't really change a lot. That's something that stays fairly consistent with the bike across all the tracks.
Yeah.
But the shock does change. The shock setting changes, and that's a lot to do with different surfaces. Like different tracks have different grip levels from them, and the shock changes typically to try to get the tire to work with that particular grip level of the surface. Right. Some tracks are really, really grippy, and the track's got a lot of grip in it. So you're sort of trying to take grip away from the tire, you know what I mean? Because if you've got trying to get a lot of grip out of with the shock, trying to get a lot of grip out of the tire, well, then you get heaps of grip out of the tire, heaps of grip in the track, and you'll just shred your tire to bits real quick, you know what I mean? So you're almost on a grippy track, you're trying to take grip away, and then on a track that's a low grip track, well, then you're trying to get all the grip out of the tire, so you're doing that with the shock. So yeah, roughly that'll be what will change mostly. And then otherwise, there's actually different electronics settings for different tracks as well. Probably a lot to do with the engine brake more so than anything, just because of the different speeds of the track and the different gears that you use. So the engine brake changes a little bit, and there's actually a lot of you can find a lot with the setups of the bikes nowadays in how the engine brake works, because we don't because we don't manually control the downshift and use the clutch and, do that in our hand, we're relying 100% on the electronics because you roll off the throttle, grab the brake, and then you just, downshift with the gear lever, you just pull on the shifter and the electronics take care of all that stuff. So getting that right and getting that in the sweet spot can make a huge difference. So yeah, I mean the team, we don't do heaps with that now because I feel like they've had the bike for so long, they've done so much riding on it that they've got it in the sweet spot anyway, and it's pretty close. We just tweak it marginally, here and there. But yeah, that is something else that changes between tracks, definitely.
Yeah. One last question: do this come up because you get all these opinions from people, amateurs out there around rear brake?
Mm.
Do you use the rear brake much, if at all?
So no, not typically. No, not a lot of rear brake. I never use the rear brake on the entry into the turns. I'm all on the front brake. I never touch the rear brake on the way into the turns, and I don't use it in the middle of the turns as well. The only time that I use that rear brake for me as a tool is sometimes off the start when you do the start to try and control the wheelie. And the exit of the turns to try and control the wheelie as well. And that's not even every turn. That's just some turns are just the nature of the turn as the bike sort of, you pick the bike up off the edge of the tire and come up onto the top part of the tire. It's a quite rapid sort of rate, and the throttle application's a rapid rate as well. So the accelerations, so it causes the wheelie. So it's actually I find it far easier to just roll the throttle to full gas and then just modulate the wheelie with the rear brake. I mean, it does have wheelie control on it, with the electronics, but sometimes and often it doesn't work when the rate of acceleration is so fast. It's almost like when the wheelie comes up and the rate's so quick that the wheel comes up, it can go past whatever the hold should be to stop the wheelie. It can go past that, and then it'll take off. It'll just keep going up. So, like especially at Morgan Park, definitely there's a lot of places there that I'll use it just because of the nature of those types of turns. Yeah. On a lot of the faster tracks where you've got a lot of momentum in the turn, well then the wheel will come up, but it'll be at a very slow rate, and the electronic will catch it. But yeah, I know I see it's an interesting one because it's been something that it's been very interesting to me, even as a rider growing up and progressing through the different categories of bikes and everything about rear brake. And I can only go off of results and my speed. Like when I ride, I don't ever feel like I need to use the rear brake to go faster. Like I can always do everything I need to do the speed that I want to go at with the front brake, and I can control it with that. And like I said, I've set lap records, I've won races, I've won championships. That's how I've ridden, and it's worked for me. And so that's just the way that I ride. I feel like it's a tool, and some people talk about using it in the last part of the braking phase. So, we talk about trail braking on the entry of the turn. Initially on the first part of the braking, it's very heavy with the front brake, maximum brake push with the front, because you're in a straight line. Typically the rear is either in the air or it's very, very light. So rear brake application then wouldn't make any sense anyway because the rear is off the ground or very light. And all your stopping powers with the front wheel. But once you start to trail the brake off and steer the bike into the turn, then you're starting to put some more weight to the rear. The rear tire's got some more grip, and particularly as you get to the last, very, very last, probably 25% of releasing the front brake pressure, that's when you'll see guys, particularly in MotoGP and World Superbike, see them start to really look to apply the rear brake and just get the maximum out of the braking phase that you possibly can. But it seems so marginal to me, like the amount that you would get out of that. And yeah, like again, I've never really played around with it too much, and I've never felt like I needed to. So yeah,
Mm.
that's my take on it. That's how I use it.
Do you have a thumb brake on your bike?
No, I don't think I don't think I've actually ever used a thumb brake, to be honest. But I know there's definitely some riders in, because it started to become a big thing, GP and
Mm.
even World Superbike there probably a few years ago, or even longer than a few years ago. It started to become a big deal about the thumb brake, and some of the riders now in the ASBK field will have a thumb brake on there. And they definitely use it, yeah. But no, I just stick to the foot brake. That's just what I've like I said, I don't use it a lot, and I have a
Gotta
good
get the
feeling with.
results.
Oh, yeah, that's it. But I have a good feeling with it for controlling the wheelie as well.
Yeah.
So I don't have any need to really run a thumb brake. So yeah, happy with the rear brake.
There was like a data overlap that I saw, yeah, a little while ago, that had circulated around, and it showed the difference between two riders. One rider's he's come in the top 10, and one's come 15th or something. And the only difference was actually rear brake application late in the corner, and that
Yes. Yeah. Right.
that it was my first exposure to understand where they're using that thumb brake and how they're using it. But I think the other thing about it, like as you say, controls wheel, because it squats the back. People don't realize it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just wheeler controls electronic.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
And from that too. So yeah, it's
Yeah, look, I think like clearly the guys in I watch the GP and World Superbike races, and it's clear as day. You can see them visually where they're applying the rear brake, and like I said, it's very like it's the last part of the braking phase, right before they get to the apex nearly. They just trail that rear brake into the turn, and they wouldn't do it if it wasn't beneficial. I mean, they're pretty much all. I'd assume they're all doing it, and yeah, like it's got to be beneficial. But there are big differences between our bikes and their bikes. So I don't know. So then I just don't know whether it's something that's not really necessary on our style of bikes versus there's got to be a reason why they're doing it.
yeah.
But until somebody starts just disappearing in the distance, and that's the difference between what I'm doing and what they're doing, then I'll start using it. But until then, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
After the last weekend, I'm backing you as you are.
I just use it on the exits and turns.
Yeah, yeah, to stop your wheelies.
Yeah.
But listen, next round. Where's the next round? What's your forecast for that?
Yeah, so we head to Phillip Island next. I think it's going to be a 2 day event. So it's normally we run 3 day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but this is going to be a 2 day event, just Saturday, Sunday. I don't know exactly how the schedule's going to be for that yet. I don't know what the plan is. So look, I'm in the process now of trying to work out, yeah, getting some more track time down there, trying to get myself prepared as best I can for that event. For sure, we go there. The Ducati's very very quick there. Waters is very fast there. I believe Harry Voigt, because he was absent this weekend at Morgan Park, but he's been overseas doing some racing. I believe he'll come back and ride the second McMartin bike, Ducati there, like he did at the start of the year, and he was pretty quick. So I believe he'll be there. I'm pretty sure Herfoss will be back as well from America. So I think he'll be back with the Desmo Sport guys. Yeah. So honestly, look, it's a track where Crew has proved that the R1 can still be quite competitive there, but it's fully on the limit. You know what I mean? Like so. And he's always seemed to have a little bit of an edge over me there. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be super tough. I mean, on paper right now, you would say, I would put it like this: you're going to go Waters, you're going to go probably Harry, Herfoss, Crew. I'm going to be hanging around somewhere around, fourth, fifth, whatever it is, somewhere around there. But I know that, and I know that that's not good enough. So I'll be doing everything I can to get myself further up the front. Because to give you any hope for the championship, you got to be there at that pointy end, right at the pointy end. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I'm excited for it. I feel like this is the sort of thing that suits me the most. When you're in a situation where both those races that we just done it, the two Queensland rounds, that style of pressure is where you go there and the expectation is just that you're supposed to win, because you've done so many laps there and you're the favorite and all these things, you know what I mean? So that's one style of pressure to sort of, deal with. I feel like I suit this style of pressure now better, where you're probably the underdog. You've got to come up with something good to be able to, get a great result. So, and I like that because it's I just gets you hungry, and it'll tell. We'll find out at the race with the results, at the end of the weekend as to how bad you want it. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be a big challenge, but I've done a lot of hard work in these last two rounds to get ourselves back in the hunt for the championship. Like I said, we're 17 points, so it's a case now where there's enough pressure back on Waters where he can't just sort of settle. If things aren't going right for him or he's struggling, whatever, he can't just settle for a mediocre result. He's got to be winning races.
Yeah.
And like motorbikes, two wheels, anything can happen. So we've got that pressure back on. And now, like I said, I'll be doing everything I can to try and get my best result there. And we've got I think we've got about, it's a big break now, still about 6.5 weeks maybe till the round. So we're got lots of time to think about it, that's for sure. It's going to be the 7th, 8th of September. So we've got a long way to go. The problem is when you have such big breaks like this, when you come off a weekend where you've got good momentum, let's say we would go from the weekend just gone and straight away next weekend or the weekend after we go to Phillip Island. We've just come off a high, you've got that confidence. Even if the track isn't a track that suits you or you haven't had the great results in the past, you've just come off a weekend that's really awesome and you can carry that momentum. Once you have these big breaks, it makes it hard to really keep any momentum. Everything changes over the course of the next bloody 2 months nearly. So it's
get it because you don't want to go to Phillip Island now. It'd be pretty.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. We want to go there now, but anyway, we got 6.5 weeks. So
we've been on a break with the school for 3 months or something, and I know I'm like a heroin addict who hasn't had a shot, struggling a little bit. But,
you need your fix. That's the thing with racing is that it's an adrenaline. It's adrenaline every time you go racing, and when you don't get that for a long time, you start missing out.
Well, listen, mate. Good luck. All the best. We'll be avid watchers and all that. I noticed a wheelie in race 1 at Morgan Park, but I didn't see any stoppies. I was looking.
I've forgotten about it. Every time I see you after the weekend, I go, oh yeah, I've got to practice my stoppies. I haven't done anything.
I'm going to text you just before the race. I'm to remind.
You know what? I thought off topic, but about the wheelies, the stoppies. I thought that was hilarious. Top Rack got a fine at Mazzano for doing a stoppie at the finish line, and then this weekend just go and watch the races of at Donington there, and he does a stoppie coming into the last turn, so they can't penalise him because he didn't do it at the finish line. He's already done it. The last,
that's right, he did too.
The last
Fine him for that, for doing it over the line. Yeah, slowing down over the lines probably not.
Yeah,
but he was miles ahead. So
I know it's crazy, but anyway, he just put on a show and I don't know, took the piss out of him basically, because he did it on the last turn and then he waited till he was after the checkered flag and then did it again. So.
Well, that's right. Now that makes sense because they did the his little celebration. They actually the coppers came out and they booked him.
That's right.
You see that? Right. There was interesting.
They give him the fine. There must have been something else that happened. I didn't really I didn't know about this and didn't realize. I don't even know really exactly what's happened, but BMW have done something with the seat, with his seat, like that. They've done some custom thing there, must have had to. I don't know. They must have made one initially that didn't pass. They had to be within a certain regulations or something, And anyway, this one's okay now. So they did another one in the other race in the celebration. They had the technical inspection going on, and they did
That's right. Yeah,
got the tape measure out and checked it all. And
that makes sense too. Now I
yeah, yeah.
just joined the dots. Yeah, I saw the seat. It's got a little lump in the back.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like I said, somebody else will know more about this, but I wonder if it's been lengthened or yeah, well, I don't know exactly what it is because I just know that bloody whatever they've done just recently, he's up the road by a mile, he's flying. So
Well, he won by 11.8 seconds or something. It's like they're not even in sight.
no. I think he's won the last 7 races in a row or something. Like it's just
Crazy.
found the groove with that bike and he's away.
Oh man, yeah, next level, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing good.
Yeah. Anyway,
Keep
I'll go
practicing.
back and watch. I'll go and watch Top Rack Stoppies, and you
He's
send me a message before the next one. I'll practice.
well, that's the standard. So
That's
I'll
it.
text you. But good luck, mate. All the best. Thanks for making the time as usual. And I know people enjoy it because they tell me they love hearing you get your insights into the racing and appreciate your input.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, mate. Yeah, great to catch up. Yeah, really enjoying doing these after the races, and yeah, likewise, I've had a few people come up to me and say that they enjoy watching it, so or listening to it. So yeah, we'll keep doing it, and yeah, catch you after the next round.